Hello, everyone. So we're all taught in the military when you bring up a problem, you have to bring solutions. For the past couple of weeks, we've been discussing senior military officer leadership and some of the issues and the problems that the viewers and myself have observed. So what we want to do now is we're going to segue from this and talk about some of the solutions that we think should be brought forward to improve our military and especially its performance, because it's really been dismal over the last 80 years. If you think about it, money that we've spent over $30 trillion since World War II, the results have been very poor, to say the least. So, what can we do to improve the military? And many of these solutions that I'm going to talk about are fairly simple. They don't cost a lot of money. The first and foremost is really senior officer accountability. And what I mean by that is, if you take a young troop who loses his weapon, he's going to get slam dunked. But we can have a general lose a war and he gets retired in grade, for a lifetime of pension of over $200,000 a year. And in addition to that, he's going to get consulting contracts with the military industrial complex. So that is very unfair. If your performance doesn't warrant your retirement, you should be held accountable. So if you didn't do well in the Afghan or the war in Iraq, you should be held accountable rather than being promoted up or being retired. Because what that does is sends the wrong message of having a two-tier accountability system, one for the troops and one for the officers. And within the officers, if you're a junior officer, lieutenant colonel below it, you're going to get slammed dunk. You'll get relieved, or if you're a senior officer, generally a general officer, they close ranks and they protect each other. So that needs to really fundamentally change. And the only way that can change that is at the Secretary of Defense level and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staffs and the service chiefs. They got to hold each other accountable and fellow general officers accountable to the same one standard in the military that everybody's held accountable to. So I think that's very, very important. It's extremely important that that happens. One standard of performance, one standard of accountability. Doesn't matter what your rank is. The second is, because this flag officers, they like to close ranks, they've created this very submissive culture in the military. And what this culture basically says is, hey, if you speak out, we're going to use the UCMJ to essentially, in the words of, a former commandant, is crush you. And that's, organizations don't improve unless there is honest discussion within the organization of how to improve. If we're just going to just nod because we're scared that we're going to get crushed, and the troops see this, they know that, they can't speak up. We encourage them to, but they've seen examples of it. A good example is Lieutenant Colonel Schiller. He got squashed. They threw him in the brig for speaking out. Rather than, David Berger, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, should have addressed the issues head on, what he's talking about. And what that does is it builds institutional credibility, because now what happens is now the troops, just see that and they just keep quiet. When they get out, that's when they start speaking up. And if you go to some of these chat rooms and look at some of the comments that these troops are writing, they're atrocious. And basically, these comments are against the leadership of the military. They don't have faith in it. And then a young 16-year-old, 17, 18-year-old kid is reading this, and he's deciding his future if he wants to go in the military and stuff. And he goes to the same chat rooms because he wants to find out what everybody thinks about it. And he reads that, and he's like, you know what? The hell with it. I'm going to get paid $14 an hour. Well, I can make $20 an hour at Walmart. So how do we change this culture of submissiveness? Encourage people to speak up, and then address the issues head on. Don't try to think underneath the carpet like they don't exist. They do exist. There is an elephant in the room. You can't ignore it. You got to talk about it. You got to solve these issues in good faith. And don't take it personally, flag officers. Fix the problems. The next issue that we're talking about, since I brought up the poor wages that our troops get, the president is about to sign a defense budget of $886 billion, almost $1 trillion. Think about that. All the while, we've got 40 million Americans that are food insecure, and the same number don't have $400 in an emergency. So this is a huge chunk out of our national treasure that we're putting towards the military. So as a result, the military has to perform. And the only way it can perform is by the right leadership. Consequently, now what's happening is not only do these generals get promoted, they get a $200,000 a year retirement for life, a pension for life, but they're also going to, get these high-paying jobs at the military-industrial complex. And somebody explained to me, why do they warrant a 5.2% pay raise? For what? What have they done? What I propose is, yeah, we need to have a pay raise in the military, but for the troops, our staff NCOs, and our junior officers. They're the ones that warrant the pay raise. Our colonels and above don't warrant it. And you may hate me for that, but listen, I lived off that paycheck, and we lived fine. My family was well taken care of. They're well fed, and they didn't have any wants or needs that I couldn't provide on my military paycheck. So my point is, colonels and above don't need a pay raise. Absolutely not. So if I was Congress, I would say the pay raise should be, majors and below should be the pay raise. Lieutenant colonels and above don't need a pay raise. They're living fine. They're doing great. And the other thing you got to remember is they got tenure. They hit the 20-year mark. They've got a great retirement coming to them. 50% of your paycheck is retirement. And if you stick around 40 years, as most generals, senior generals do, you're going to get, $200,000 a year. You don't need it. You don't need a pay raise. So I would rather see that money go to our troops. I would rather see that money go to our base housing for our troops. And I would rather see that money go towards improving the quality of life and training. That's what we need to focus on. So when the troops see this stuff, they get a bit irked about it. This whole military is not, it should be an upside down pyramid rather than a pyramid where only a few at the top are benefiting from it. So that's the second thing I would say. The first thing is accountability. Get rid of the submissive culture, and pay raise. For the focused pay raise for our young enlisted troops and our young officers. That's who needs it. And the next topic I'm going to talk about is culture of micromanagement. People, senior officers, as you move up, you get so scared of making decisions that, oh my God, if I make the wrong decisions, I'm going to get, in deep trouble. Well, you know what? That's fine. Make the wrong damn decision. We can't have a zero defect culture, nor can we have a culture of micromanagement. So it's okay to make bad decisions because we learn from those bad decisions. And you can't have people micromanaging 3-4 levels down. It just doesn't work. And unfortunately, we've developed this culture where you're being micromanaged to death, and that's when we wonder why the top 10% leaves, in the military. So we need to find ways of how to stop micromanaging and let people do their jobs for what they've been trained to do, and have trust in our subordinates. That's the most important part. So for today, these are the few things that I'm talking about, and in this series, we're going to continue talking about it. I encourage the viewer, leave your suggestions in the comments. I don't have all the answers. I'm just bringing up issues that I read about, that I hear about. And from these issues, we can come up with, I'm sure, some great suggestions and recommendations to how to better our military. Because it's consuming an incredible amount of resources from our nation, which people can use. The 40 million that I talked about, $886 billion is a lot of money. We spent trillions of dollars, by some estimates, $3 to $5 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now think about it. Think about what happened. We spent trillions there, thousands of lives lost, to drive out the Taliban. And 20 years later, we ended up giving it back to the Taliban. What the F is that? And then we recognize those same generals, they all get their 4-star pension, and they go home, and then the military-industrial complex hires them, and then they become lobbyists to ensure that these budgets keep going up. That's a losing proposition. America is never going to get ahead this way. So in future podcasts, the focus is going to be on how to solve some of the issues in the military. And please leave your comments. And if you feel like it, subscribe, because it evidently helps with the algorithm or some shit like that. I don't even know what it is, but that's what they tell me. So I appreciate it. Stay rugged. Khan out.